A Mercury-Saturn conjunction in Synastry in a relationship means that these two are here to help each other out. And what does it mean that they're here to help each other out? Well, it means that they are truly here to ground each other. Well, that's part of it. I just want to stop right here. Before I even go on, I have to address this. I posted an episode to Spotify yesterday, and it didn't work out because I posted it, and apparently it didn't go through the system, and it didn't get published to my podcast. So I just have sort of a rule that if I get done with the posting of everything, and if it's not up by then I'll get help with it. Hopefully it will be up by then. But so, I will just see, and help is always available. So I just thought I'd address that right before getting into it. Hopefully this episode does upload properly without needing any assistance or anything of that nature. So, I think it will, but anyway. So going back to the introduction to this video, Mercury and Saturn are coming together in a relationship. What does it mean? Well, it means that Mercury is here to introduce Saturn to all of these new ideas and all these new perspectives, all these new ways of looking at things. And Saturn is here to make Mercury's ideas grounded, practical, doable. And that's the highway to this. But there can be some challenges. I'm going to delve into that as I go through this video. But welcome to the Cosmic Sky Podcast. I'm Ever Cardi. On these episodes, I do general astrology. Every single day, something new. And really, I also do transits. Transits for the different weeks, different astrology transit videos, a collective video, 12 signs for the different weeks. And I do more if I feel like it that I want to talk about. I'm just going to kind of let you know up front before anything else that I am going to be doing Saturn in Virgo tomorrow because I'm going to be, on a trip for my health for a couple of days, the 21st, the 23rd, and just for a health thing. I may not talk about it, I may not announce what it actually is, but I'm not going to be doing podcasts. I may do one on the 22nd. I'm actually planning to do that if I have the time on Jupiter and Taurus. It's just kind of finishing up episode for the Jupiter through the sign series on this podcast. If I can get around to it, then I will. That's my plan. That's my plan. But if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But anyway, it's kind of making that a plan. But I think it'll work out. So I'll plan on doing that on the 22nd. But anyway, I just want to get Saturn and Virgo done before anything else. And then when I get back on the 24th and 25th, I will do the weekly astrology videos, the 24th and the 25th, the collective and the 12 signs. So tune in for that. Then coming up in a couple of days. So let us talk about Mercury conjunct Saturn in a Synastry relationship. Synastry is when two people come together and form a relationship with one another. It is where their charts combine, where an aspect comes together and they really, really formulate something which can really, really be compatible or not so compatible depending on the aspect. It could be a conjunction to a relationship. Could be a trine, a beautiful trine. Could be a sextile aspect of opportunity. It all depends. But one person's placement, aspecting the other person's placement creates a sort of relationship dynamics, because aspects in a natal chart, are really the dynamics that go on between, in your chart with your different planets and, in relationships and all that in your natal chart with all the aspects in between two people deals with that relationship. So, delving right in, I'm going to go really, really deep with these points. So, with Mercury and Saturn, when these two come together, because I have this personally, I have my Mercury is at 1 degree of Taurus, and I have my mom, who has her Saturn at 2 degrees of Taurus, so we're pretty 1 degree apart. So I'm going to talk about some things with this relationship. Maybe I'll kind of pepper that in and include that as I go through this. But anyway, delving right in. So, there could be certain conversations that happen here. Certain conversations that happen that are very, very serious. Or they're talking about very, very serious things like money, costs, work, projects, the efforts that have to come into making something happen. If you're launching a run-up project, then it's going to be happening in the way that it is. If you're creating a committee table, then you're going to need a table. You're going to need the sales to be able to sell those products for the committee. If, it's like Mercury has all these ideas and Saturn has the practical ideas and plans to implement those ideas that Mercury has. So there can be the conversations between these two, because Mercury's communication conversations and Saturn is discipline, structure, restriction and limitation. The conversations here can be very, very serious on very, very serious matters. There can be this, but the downside is they kind of hold each other back. They really, really do hold each other back. And we have, Moon conjunct Venus, and so we're very, very curious. We bounce ideas off of each other, and we're very, very much like this. But there is this aspect going on. It's in Taurus, a very, very stable, grounded earth sign. So, sometimes I get told that I am too rigid in my thinking. Well, Saturn in Taurus is pretty rigid, so, just saying. So, but anyway, I try not to be. I try to be flexible and open to nuance in my thinking and whatever. But anyway, I just thought I might add that in here. So they kind of hold each other back when it comes to playfulness and spontaneity. These two issues are really, really huge for these two coming together, because playfulness can be a sort of setback, this quality. And playfulness in its essence is really approaching life with being curious, with being open to learning new information, learning new things, being spontaneous, doing something without on whims, not planning it out or doing something out of the freedom and just the idea of doing it. Like, I'm just doing it because I had this idea and I want to do it in the moment. And humor. So the creativity here in these relationships can be held back, can be hindered. Playfulness and spontaneity are not necessarily big power players in this kind of a relationship dynamic. The Mercury person is responsible for introducing new perspectives and ideas to Saturn, which may have a rigid or limited way of viewing and thinking and approaching life. And it frees the Saturn person. It helps them to lighten up. See the more curious side of life. See the more playful, open, spontaneous, and helps them open up their minds to be open to learning, ideas, communication, all that with whatever endeavor that they're discussing and that they're, that they're involved in. And it helps them to helps the Saturn person to see different sides of an issue. See that all issues, it's not just their idea. It's not just their way of thinking, their way of going about it. It's that issues have all these different sides to it. Issues have all these different angles that you can approach it at. Mercury helps Saturn see that. Mercury helps Saturn see those issues for what they really are and helps to get it out of its, rut, so to speak, of what's going on. Helps them see different sides of issues, and it really, really gets it out of its fixed mentality. It really, really has a fixed, in Taurus, the sign that it's in is a fixed earth sign. It can be pretty stubborn. It can hold on to the conventional, comfortable, stable, this is the way that we've always done things, this is the way that, things work, and, and it's pretty positive. I mean, it isn't a sign of Taurus. It is a really, really stable earth sign. So, it's not, too vivid of a relationship with Mercury conjunct Saturn. Although there are, a couple of things, here and there. But Mercury helps get Saturn out of its fixity with things. The Saturn person can help Mercury, because Mercury can be, the thing with Mercury is it can be all scattered. It can be all scattered, all around with, what it's doing. It can be all over the place with all these ideas and all these thoughts and all these things that it wants to do and things that it wants to try. And all these just ideas of I want to do this, I want to do that, and just running all over the place, all over the darn place. And so Mercury starts this book, starts this project, starts that website, and does whatever. And Saturn says to Mercury, focus. Commit to one thing and follow through with it. Commit to one thing and take all of your attention toward all these multiple different things and focus your energy on that one objective to see it through, because Saturn understands that in order to achieve goals, in order for things to be actually done and achieved and practical in the material world, you have to have a plan, a structure, follow through, and that's just what it takes. And Saturn is all about that practical side of life. So Saturn person can help Mercury to also become more detailed. Look at the little details of things. Look at the important details of something when it comes to Saturn. Saturn, Mercury, and Virgo is really, really strong also. And it's easiest in the Earth signs, because Saturn rules over Capricorn. And so any of them in the Earth signs, that's the easiest pairing for these. It can be, very, very stabilizing for Taurus, Capricorn, and Virgo. So it becomes very, very detailed when it comes to these things. And it can add depth to their thoughts. It can add depth to... Saturn can say to Mercury, you don't have to be all surface level about it. You don't have to be all superficial and up in the head and looking at things only at face value and just seeing things at a very, very, very shallow, very, very flighty level. It can be actually, seeing somebody just for their ego, just for their voice, just for their, appearance and clothes, or actually the substance of what they have to offer in terms of their character, in terms of their ideas. And Saturn puts in substance to what Mercury talks about and does. So it can help them become help Mercury become deeper when it comes to their thoughts in that way. In the early parts of this relationship, the thing to note is in the early parts of this relationship, Mercury's sharp intellect and cleverness that can come about with being very very important here with this. These qualities of Mercury can create a problem for Saturn. I'm going to get into this dynamic. But I'm going to get into the early stage of this relationship, at the beginning of this relationship. Mercury has a very, very sharp intellect, very, very, very sharp, very, very sharp intellect, because Mercury is very, very intellectual, very much about ideas, and Mercury is clever. There's a smartness, there's an intelligence to Mercury. And as the relationship deepens and as they get to know each other more and they deepen their connection, they become more familiar with how each other works and their dynamics and their qualities that they have with them. So at the positive side, the most positive manifestation of this relationship, they can work together. They can find ways to, like, teamwork. They can be like two ants picking up a log or a stick or whatever and work together. They can combine the best of both worlds. Mercury can take its ideas and its spontaneity and its sharp qualities of thoughts and being very, very communicative and all that. And Saturn can take its structure, discipline, grounding, committed qualities, and they can come together to form something very, very logical, and actually taking these ideas and manifesting them into reality. So this can be a very, very productive and powerful relationship. At the positive, they can work together very, very effectively, especially when it comes to practical matters. Practical matters of life and problem solving, those kind of things. Finding solutions to different kinds of issues, and really, really being able to put these things together and solve all these, situations that need to be fixed. And you're taking a problem of a jump tree and you're putting it to a tree. Well, what does that even mean? Let's say you have a problem with, your computer not working. Saturn can find ways to help the situation by helping the person reboot their computer and turning it off and being able to help technically with the computer, or actually learning math. It can be kind of like the student and the teacher kind of relationship, where Mercury is struggling with learning something that's very, very all over the place with its ideas, and Saturn can help it ground and learn it in a very, very structured, productive, and practical way. With Saturn can help Mercury to learn the skill or learn that subject matter and really, really get it down and get it very, very digested. Saturn can help it stick, help it to help Mercury to remember that thing with actually learning it in a grounded fashion. Saturn can learn to view Mercury's cognitive flexibility and quick wit, because these are qualities that Mercury has, less as a threat. Because Saturn views it as a threat. Saturn thinks that Mercury is here to step on its toes with all its ideas and spontaneous, visions with what it wants to create. And Saturn is like, that's great, but that has no bearing in reality. That has no structure in reality. That has no significance in reality. How are you going to actually make this manifest this? And I'm going to get into some things later, and there's several examples of this that could be read about this. But, Saturn views Mercury's spontaneous ideas and intellect and being able to just share information so, articulately and so eloquently. And they feel insecure about themselves because they feel envious of this. They tend to feel at the lowest manifestation. They view it as that it's a threat to them. That that Mercury is too big for its britches, or that Mercury is much more powerful and much more extroverted and just bigger and better than Saturn, and much more free and much more fun of a person, and Saturn can get really, really envious, maybe even jealous of the Mercury person. And so they can view it less of a threat and more of an opportunity for the Saturn person to grow by Mercury being so communicative with all its ideas and all that. So Mercury can see the worth of the stable qualities of Saturn. Saturn is very, very stable. Wants something structured, wants something long-term, wants something foundations, wants something that can stick. That's not, that is in place, that if a plane were to hit that building, if a plane were to run into that building, it wouldn't destroy it. The building would be sturdy enough with its bricks and mortar and ticks and structure and all that, so that it would stay up. It would remain up. It would be stable and it would be resilient. Saturn wants to be resilient and wants to build something resilient that can stand the tests of any struggles with all that. That's what Saturn is concerned with. So, Saturn is very, very carries this. The Saturn person carries this. It all depends on what sign it's in. I'm not going to go through all those signs in this episode, but it can be very, very stable. It can be Saturn can be very, very discerning, discriminating between knowing what is worth investing its mental and energy into, and it's discerning what with and it can eliminate and it can throw out. It's kind of like if you were to throw out certain elements of your house and certain fluctuations and certain aspects and certain diabolical, physical objects in your house that don't seem to carry any meaty mass anymore, that are not just hold any weight, and that they don't serve you anymore, and you're throwing those away. Saturn can eliminate any idea that's not practical, that's not based in a grounded sense of solid reality, and it can really, really, hold back the Mercury person in a way and inhibit the Mercury person. And that's the negative of this relationship. I'll get into some of those dynamics later on. But it can be very, very, discerning. And Saturn and the Mercury person can also really, really consider and really, really think about and really, really have a fixation on these qualities that Saturn can offer. The intellectual and forthcoming differences between these two individuals, between the Mercury person and the Saturn person, creates this kind of tension that is built up. That because the Mercury person wants to be so free and speak with all these ideas and have all these ideas and wants to communicate and wants to bounce ideas off of the Saturn person and wants to think and wants to speak, do all these very, with agility. Saturn wants something that's grounding, something that's not spontaneous, something that has a plan, something that we were mapping it out, something grounded in reality, in ground reality. And so this can create this tension between these two where they may want different things, but there's a positive side of the story where they can work together. Mercury is a neutral planet and Saturn is a malefic. So at best these two together can create something very, very logical, where Mercury's communication and sense of ideas and Saturn's grounding logic can come together to form something very, very rational at best. But anyway, Mercury the Mercury person might have all these great ideas that they want to implement. And Saturn, as soon as Saturn hears out Mercury's, maybe not listens to Mercury, but as soon as Saturn hears Mercury, it's like, no, I don't think so. This, are you sure about this? No. Saturn is concerned about how much the thing costs, how expensive it is. Is it complicated or simple? Can this be achievable? What are the factors that have to be put into this? Let's make a plan. Let's make a structure. This idea, it's too much. We can't do this in this amount of time. We can't afford this. We can't get the people together. How are you going to get the people together? And Saturn questions the Mercury person like, Saturn is like, well, go for it if you can get all the factors together and get the people, and tries to convince the Mercury person out of this great idea that it has for itself. And Saturn can be like, go do this crazy thing, and then Mercury is like, deflated and hurt because, oh wow, you've really, really just put the cold hard reality ice on me. And so Mercury then is dropped into a really, really humble, self-conscious place where all this enthusiasm and all this curiosity and open-mindedness for implementing this new idea just goes away like that balloon pops. And then, it's left between a rock and a hard place, left kind of in the middle of a desert, not knowing where to go, not knowing where to turn, not knowing how to manifest this idea in reality. Saturn has all these limitations and factors of reality of what it wants to implement, such as time. How much time is it going to take? How simple it is. How much effort is it going to take? So Saturn, what happens here is it gets envious of Mercury. Gets envious of Mercury's, it looks at Mercury's communication in quick wit and it goes, if only I could be like that. If only I could be just not so limited in my conditioned, stuck version of reality and the structures and the time it takes and the factors that play into this physical 3D reality. And Saturn gets insecure about what Mercury has to offer. So Saturn gets envious of Mercury's communicative and quick wit. Because Mercury has a really, really strong quick wit out of a place of, as I said, insecurity. So Saturn gets envious of Mercury's mental sharpness. And Mercury also has, Mercury can just so easily just come up with all these ideas and all these people and all these quotes and all these things just on the fly. The person who has Saturn conjunct my Mercury has Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. Very, very, more reflective, not the most spontaneous with the ideas, needing time to reflect before responding. So also in Earth, so it's very, very grounded. I mean, we have a very, very air and earth kind of relationship. So a lot of air and some earth also. So, kind of both and here with our relationship. And, with this, Mercury can just so easily just speak all these ideas and spontaneously just have all these thoughts and ideas and this knowledge. And Saturn doesn't have that because it's so stuck in the, traditional, kind of ways of being. And Mercury can just have all these ideas and meet all these people and talk to all these people and gather up all this information and send these messages, receive these messages, like all the mercurial, intellectual elements of what Mercury can achieve is what Saturn feels insecure about. So there's this feeling like, these realistic and conventional approaches by Saturn, by that Saturn has, there's this feeling like these things are not as they may, who knows, you can't make this full out assumption. They may be received by some people, but Saturn feels and probably observes that the case may be that Mercury's, ideas and ways of being are, that other people are just drawn more to these things. Other people, gravitate more towards the thoughts and ideas, and words and sentences and phrases, paragraphs, whatever, that that Mercury says, and not Saturn. So Saturn's over here, feeling really, like, again, like the Saturn-Sun relationship, wanting to tame down the Mercury with its, ideas and spontaneity, although not so about the self and individualistic, not so, somber as the Sun-Saturn connection. So, not so inhibiting, but still, because Mercury and Saturn do have more in common than, the Sun and Saturn, especially because Saturn is considered in its sign of detriment in Leo. The Sun rules Leo. So, there you go. So, at the high road, Saturn helps to ground, Mercury's quick, spontaneous, and possibly impulsive ways of doing this. Like, Mercury can just learn ideas and bounce from one idea to another and share ideas like really, really quickly and really, really sharply. Takes Saturn more time. Saturn's slower, more methodical, more cautious, more gradual, more slower when it comes to doing this. And so Saturn helps to ground Mercury's, sort of impulsive way of, having all these thoughts and, learning about all these things and being able to, do all these things really, really effectively with what it does and with what it tries to achieve with its communication and its learning. So Mercury can go to Saturn with wanting to add structure and realism to a project that the Mercury person, at best, this is the best manifestation of this, where, Mercury has this idea and wants to make it a reality, wants to make it real, wants to make it feasible, wants to make it, wants to take the idea and manifest it into something that has matter, into something that has physical form to it. And actually you can see it and hear it and touch it and taste it, like you can, perceive it with your five senses, and you can understand it in that way. So, Mercury goes to Saturn. The best manifestation of this relationship is Mercury goes to Saturn for this kind of structure that it's seeking, that they might feel that they are just sort of running all over the place and not knowing how to ground, not having all these ideas. And so then Saturn can help them and guide them with the project and give them tips and techniques and tricks, help them, create the plan and get the money to do this, and get the right tools to do this, and help them do it with discipline, and put the serious effort into doing it, like Saturn helps to ground Mercury. That if they follow certain structures and guidelines, the Mercury person will succeed. And Saturn can be, at best, very, very understanding and very sympathetic to the Mercury person, caring about them, being very, very a stable force, a stable rock that the Mercury person can rely on. Because Saturn encourages the Mercury person. Saturn is like, just practice makes perfect, and if you keep going it this way, you will succeed. Like Saturn is like, the parent who like trains the child to, walk or go on a bike without training wheels. Like, it trains you, and if you follow these methods, like Saturn gives the structure, the method, the way of doing something, and then it says it sort of releases at best. Saturn can sort of release Mercury to then do it on its own and actually achieve it. Where Saturn says, whatever the relationship is. And these videos do not apply solely to romantic relationships, any kind of relationship this video applies to. So I don't want to see any comments about, oh, well, it's not this way in soulmate relationships. I'm not only referring to that, okay? So Saturn can give all this, encouragement and reassurance to Mercury, when it gives them the tools, and because Saturn is very, very knowledgeable and very, very comfortable with this 3D reality and how it works, and it can support Mercury in that kind of way. So, but at worst, the kind of lower, more negative manifestation of this is that Mercury might have these big, grandiose ideas that it has, like, let's go to this vacation, or let's, build a cabin in the backyard, or let's, write a book together, or let's do an arts project together, or let's start a, let's, I don't know, go to this fancy restaurant. And when Saturn hears, let's go to the fancy restaurant, and it's like, a fancy restaurant? Are you kidding me? No, it's too expensive. It's too far away from home. Like, it gives all of these kind of restrictions and limitations to Mercury's ideas, and Mercury is just, all it's trying to do is be wanting to do things because it wants spontaneity and wants freedom and wants to try things out. Like Mercury rules Gemini, and Gemini wants to break boundaries. It wants to be free to try things out and learn new things, and it's not bound by, certain set structures or, commitments or, realism. It's bound by, it's just wanting to be free and, be very, very mental with the chatter and all that. So, Mercury might have all these big ideas that may lack the grounding and structure that's necessary. But Mercury, to be fair, is very, very full of enthusiasm with these ideas. Saturn might be the authority figure in the relationship. Saturn might just be like, dun, dun, dun. Where Saturn may be, like Mercury may be the child, and Saturn may be the parent. Okay? So, Saturn may be like an authority figure to, advise Mercury, or to get it through to the Mercury person that this can't work, the plans are not here, the details are not here, you don't have the tools to do this cannot be manifested in a physical reality. Which makes the Mercury person, doubt themselves, because Saturn doubts the Mercury person. and Saturn has this real Saturn carries this skepticism. So Saturn is very, very skeptical of this Mercury person's ideas, and so it doubts the Mercury person. It dims down. It puts down. It diminishes, minimizes the Mercury person's ideas, and destroys the enthusiasm and just the real joy and curiosity and open-mindedness to make them a reality, and want to experience those ideas. So, because when we have all these great ideas, that we want to do, don't we want to make them a reality? Like, Mercury just wants to be free, and then Saturn is like, well, makes you right down to how hard and serious this reality can be. And so that's very, very negative with Saturn. So then, it can be, the Saturn person can inhibit the Mercury person. With wanting something, with the Saturn person, wanting something more feasible, practical, and simple. Wanting this to be the case with this. So, the Mercury person may do this, the Saturn person may want something to be all three of these things. The Saturn person doesn't want things to be overcomplicated, wants things to be very, very simple. Like sometimes, with my mom, I say, let's make this dish that I want to try. No, it's too complicated. The ingredients are too expensive. What kind of diminishes the freedom of my ideas that I want to try. And sometimes I have those ideas, and that is kind of diminish with these ideas that I want to try. And no, we can't do this. No. So that is something that I relate to with this very, very strongly. So Saturn may criticize Mercury's ideas. The Saturn person may criticize the Mercury person's, and when I say Saturn and Mercury, I'm referring to the two people involved in the relationship. You do have to understand that. So Saturn may criticize Mercury's ideas for being too trivial, a waste of time, a waste of energy, a waste of breath, for being too, out there, too fun, too, too light and airy, not grounded in reality, or unrealistic, being unrealistic. And with the two of them, they can get into some pretty frustrated arenas. They can get into pretty frustrated scenarios, and a sort of set of circumstances they can put themselves into that is very, very, very upsetting to both of them. Saturn can help Mercury to ground, at best Saturn can help Mercury to ground its ideas into something more doable and practical. And, Mercury can introduce Saturn to new perspectives, especially when Saturn is too fixed in their thinking, as I've I think I've already covered this earlier. Like, Saturn is really, really fixed, and Mercury is very, open, so, more open. So Saturn can kind of limit itself with its thinking, limit itself with its rigid, thinking. Mercury can help get Saturn out of the ruts that it can put itself into, because Saturn can put itself into these ruts wanting the same things as, Saturn just wants the same comfortable routine, the same comfortable things over and over again. It doesn't like change. It wants stability. It wants to do things that are tried and true, that work, that are, tested out over and over. It doesn't want to change. It doesn't want to innovate. Mercury just has all these ideas, and so Saturn can be intimidated by that and be like, oh my goodness, this is too much for me. This is overwhelmed with this. And, and just this fear of wanting to give Mercury a chance, and this fear of actually, trying and testing out and experiencing the ideas that Mercury has to offer. So, Mercury can get Saturn out of this kind of, rut that it can get itself into with this thinking. Mercury can help Saturn, help Saturn get over its insecurities by bringing up these deep and shadowy fears and limitations that it has with certain things into the Saturn person's awareness. It can it can help Saturn become more self-aware of these things and help Saturn to heal these things. And move past these things. Mercury can ask the hard questions. Mercury is great at asking questions. Like, it can be this situation where they're, in a conversation and they're asking questions. Like, Mercury is asking, well, what is really, really going on in your mind about this? And as it understands, it can ask these more questions. Well, why do you feel lonely? What experiences in your life had made you feel this way? I see. What about this idea? Have you, like workers, have you ever considered thinking about it this way or in this perspective? So Mercury can help add light and add spice and add insight. Like Mercury can get Saturn out of its low, dark cave. This very, very dark, serious place, and lighten Saturn up and say, let's think about this different way. We don't have to be so serious about it. Let's change our perspective. Let's try out new ideas to get you out of this serious place. It can be this kind of dynamic here. So, helping them get through those obstacles. And so Saturn doesn't mean anything bad by when it tries to constrict Mercury. It's steady and practical, and at worst can really, really, as I said, fence Mercury in with its absolute rigidity. And this relationship is really about balancing practicality and open-mindedness. I think what I may not title this video this, but I think what I want to title this is something along the lines of turning agile and intelligent ideas into grounding sharp and sharp and intelligent ideas into reality, because I think that that's sort of the synastry of how these two can come together, and how these two can form something very, very compatible with one another. So it can balance practicality and open-mindedness, not to be so serious. Like, you don't have to take life so seriously and be so serious in situations. Like, that's what Mercury's here to teach Saturn. It's here to, where they can gather yourself, themselves coming together toward goals, and Mercury collects and organizes and gathers the information, and learns the information, and Saturn helps to create the plan, create the structure, does all this with research and planning and analysis is involved with this. And so it's about expressing thoughts and ideas. It's very, very important for these two to express thoughts and ideas freely and openly with one another. It's very, very, very important with this relationship to have open communication with one another. For the communication floodgates to be opened up, where they're talking freely, where they're bouncing ideas off one another, as I said before, or I believe I've said that before, where they are speaking about what they think, and having a lot of grounded, profound, deep, and meaningful conversations with one another. With the ideas, even if these ideas are not the most practical ideas, they're still worth having conversations about. And then, Mercury can introduce, an idea, just put an idea into Saturn's mind, and Saturn can be like, okay, well, let's make this a reality. Let's, like Saturn gives an inch, And Saturn gives 2 yards or a mile, with taking that idea even further than it's ever gone before, to really help the Mercury person to manifest in reality and make it step into its potential. And, depending upon how this relationship can go, positively or negative, depending upon if the Mercury person feels inhibited by the Saturn person, if they, split up, and if they go away from each other because they move away from each other because the Saturn holds back the Mercury person, by, holding back the Mercury person from all its ideas by having, it's not practical, it's not possible, it's all this. And Saturn can really limit the possibilities and potentials. And Saturn can really limit the new opportunities and that Mercury has to offer, the new possibilities that Mercury has to offer. But at best, they can come together and they can ground each other into a beautiful, happy, and loving relationship, and a productive relationship. Mercury has the sharp and agile ideas, and Saturn helps to ground those ideas into practical, physical reality. That is all I have to say on Mercury conjunct Saturn in Synastry. This has been almost an hour, 50 minutes. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I hope that you found value and insight from this, and if you did, please subscribe to my channel. I'd love for you to join this community, and I don't want you to miss the upcoming videos that I will be posting. Comment down below your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to start conversations. I love these videos to be a conversation starter where you're adding your own thing into this, and I'd love to see your feedback and comments. I want to communicate with you with those things, about those things, and I will see you back tomorrow for the Cosmic Sky podcast tomorrow, in the middle of the day at noon or whatever. Basically tomorrow again for Saturn in Virgo in the birth chart, and how that can be about where the person felt judged, where the person had to be a perfectionist. They had to take care of certain details, and self-love and creating their own routines may have been a difficult struggle for Saturn in Virgo. More on that when I go into tomorrow's podcast episode. Anyway, take care of yourselves. So will I. Bye for now.